Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Every Damn Week podcast. My name is John Kirby. Be humbled or get humbled. That is what we're talking about this week for the podcast. The idea of be humbled or get humbled centers around a concept that I believe in, which is you need a breakdown before you can have a breakthrough. And those breakdowns come at different severities. And we're going to break that down a little bit. I first want to share a personal story. And then later on, I'm going to share a story that is even worse than mine, but is very fascinating. And you probably know this person. I'm going to tell you about them here in a little bit. But for me, I've gone through and as we all have, the be humbled or get humbled steps. And for me, I ended up getting humbled. I ignored warning signs. So I chose I say about 8 years ago to go down the path of a dual IT career along with real estate, which I eventually wanted to move into being a real estate agent. And I did both at the same time for a little bit of time, for about a year and a half. And I had a contract that I was working on for about a year. And then I received word at that time during the contract that my contract was probably going to not get renewed and is going to come to an end. My first warning sign. I listened to that a little bit and I was like, yeah, well, I really don't want to go get another contract. I really don't. Now, that was like in January, February of that year. I think this was 2017. And then March, I got another extension, which was not expected, through the end of May. And I was like, okay, well, it's possible I might get another extension. So the warning sign that came up, didn't hit me and it didn't light a fire under my butt. So I just continued on, hoping things would magically work themselves out. Well, I didn't have any savings. And when May came around, there was no more extension. And I ran out and got let go from my contract. You would think warning sign number 2 of losing your contract would be enough to tell you go get another contract or another job. Your real estate career is not taking off yet. It's slow. But instead, I didn't get humble. I got very prideful. And as a result, I decided to go full-time real estate, but I had no savings. And I didn't have a lot of money coming in. And so it became really difficult to make to pay the bills. And then I had to borrow money from relatives to keep going. I ended up getting depressed, broke, in massive debt, and eventually facing lawsuits for money I owed. And I was unemployed and suicidal towards the end of 2018. I did this for almost a year and a half. And I started to get humbled a little more in the middle of 2018, about a year later, going, wow, what am I doing? And I still didn't fully get humbled until I filed for bankruptcy. That was about the time I started to really realize, hey, I need to make some changes. And I got humbled in a hard way. Now, this all triggered every damn day. And I'm very happy to be where I am now. So I've had a great success. I have a job I've been at for almost 6 years coming up on now. And I'm doing this every damn day program as well. And I'm getting that started. I have several other ventures I'm working on. And I'm taking things in a different approach than I used to when I was doing the dual career. So I've learned from those lessons. I got humbled the hard way instead of paying attention to those warning signs. I want to share a quote with you here from Napoleon Hill to help emphasize this. Every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. Now, some of you may wonder about when I say you have to have a breakdown to have a breakthrough. Some may say, no, you don't. I disagree. Every breakdown comes in degrees. And there are warning signs that we get early on in our lives to tell us that, okay, something's coming, something that you don't want to deal with is coming. You need to make a mindset shift or a change in your plan in order to avoid the real fall that could come. And I mean, here's some examples of some minor ones. Okay, let's say you're fairly fit and you start putting on a little bit of weight. That should be a warning sign that you need to make a correction somewhere. Maybe it means you cut back on your food intake, or you've cut back on your exercise routine. You need to increase that again. So there's your early warning sign. If you ignore that, obviously things tend to get worse. Minor financial stress. You start to see your debt increase. You start to find that you're having trouble making those bills every single month. Ideally, you want to catch that as early as possible, so that you can take steps to be, you cut expenses, you make a shift in what you're doing financially to be able to accommodate that. Let's say you're having arguments with your spouse at home. This is something where if you've been fine and you've been working through issues and you start having strife, you start to see those early signs. That means you need to look at something and you need to take action. Do it now instead of later. Benjamin Franklin has an excellent quote on this. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Catching these things early is critical, because if you ignore it, it all blows up in your face. And we're going to get into that. So what happens when you ignore those early warning signs? Well, those minor breakdowns become medium to large breakdowns. They start shifting into much larger problems. Let's say, for example, you've gained 40 pounds. That has now set you up with pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes. That has set you up with heart issues, heart disease. You've lost, you probably have very possibly sleep apnea. You're probably dealing with low self-esteem. Your confidence is low, and you're depressed, possibly. And these problems, and then you're putting yourself at risk for other health issues as well, other diseases, cancer, and other things that could potentially shorten your lifespan. So if you're doing nothing about this and you're 40 or more pounds overweight and you're not paying attention to these warning signs, you're heading for a major breakdown. Bankruptcy. That's where I was. Bankruptcy. That's a major breakdown right there. It is hard to deal with bankruptcy, folks. I know from personal experience, it is difficult to deal with bankruptcy, and you deal with it for a long time. The ramifications affect you and your family. So if you are not paying attention to the warnings, the early warnings, and you eventually end up hitting bankruptcy, that major breakdown is going to force you to start thinking about things differently. You get close to a divorce. You have been fighting with your spouse long enough that the spouse gets tired and threatens divorce. There's a major breakdown right there. For some, that could be a wake-up call that it's time for you to make a change. If you ignore it, you're heading for a divorce, or that you need to work things out. Serious health problems. You could be getting warning signs of serious health problems, even if you aren't overweight and you're ignoring those issues that are popping up. That could become major, where all of a sudden you go into the doctor and you get a diagnosis that you didn't want to hear. And you were not prepared for that because you didn't take the steps and deal with the early warning signs ahead of time in order to be prepared for what is coming. Failing to act can do the following. Unrepairable or long-term damage to relationships. Believe it or not, gaining a lot of weight and not doing anything about it, I truly believe this can have an impact on your relationship with people, because it's a self-esteem thing. For your kids, they see that you don't care. You don't care about your health. You don't care what you eat. And you're setting a bad example of what you're eating in front of them, and they think it's okay. This creates long-term damage in that respect, because eventually, as they grow up, if they have the same problems, they'll know that they got it from their dad. I got it from my dad. I got the poor eating habits from my dad. Thankfully, I learned, yeah, you got to eat some greens. You got to eat vegetables. You may not like them, but you got to eat them. Broccoli? Oh, I hate broccoli, but I eat it because it's something that's helping me be healthier. It's a mindset shift. I remember talking to my dad about eating vegetables, eating healthy foods. I knew that if he put down the ding dongs and the ho-hos and the Twinkies and all that stuff, if he had stopped eating those and shifted to eating salads, he would have made major progress. But he refused because he says he hated vegetables and he didn't want to eat them. And therefore, he paid the price. And that ended up eventually in death. Your failing to act could lead to divorce. I mentioned that. It leads to financial strain, continued damaged relationships with your kids. It can impact your career, or on your business if you're a business owner. And then it can lead to mental and emotional health deterioration. I had that. I was suicidal because I ignored the warning signs of the things that were coming towards me. I nearly took my life twice. This is what I like to say about all of this. It is better to be humbled on your own terms than to let the world humble you. Let me say that again. It is better to be humbled on your own terms than to let the world humble you. If you choose at what point to be humbled before the world comes up to you and slaps you in the face or smacks you down, you got a better chance of recovery. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying you have a better chance because it takes an awful lot of work in order to get your life back. So I now want to share the story of someone that ignored the warning signs and nearly lost it all. This individual started off with a great and successful career. They were earning lots of money. They were getting accolades, and this was all before they turned 30. He had great success, but when he got into his 30s, he fell into a drug addiction, and it started to take hold. And eventually, his first warning sign, he got pulled over for speeding. And at the time, when he got pulled over, police found heroin, cocaine, crack, and an unloaded .357 Magnum in his car. Guess what? He got arrested. First warning sign. You would think that would be enough, right? No. Warning sign number 2. And this was a week later. He wandered into his neighbor's house, stripped naked, and fell asleep in a child's bedroom. Guess what? Arrest number 2. Second warning sign. You'd think this would be enough, right? No. After several times dealing with the court, and he had multiple stints in rehab and court-mandated drug treatments, he kept violating probation and continued with his drug abuse. And when he finally missed a court-mandated drug test, guess what? Warning sign number 3, he got 6 months in jail. You'd think that would be enough. No. Warning sign number 4, he violated probation again, missing another court-mandated drug test. The judge got pissed off at him and sentenced him to 3 years in prison. Now, he got lucky. He had a year in prison, and then he got released on a legal technicality. That's what happened. That was warning sign number 4. Warning sign number 5. This is the 5th, and really, there's lots of little warning signs in here. So I'm doing the major synopsis warning signs. He had warning signs for, gosh, coming up on at least 7 or 8 years. He was arrested again for drug possession, sentenced to rehab and probation yet again, and got fired from his job for one for which he won an award for. His turning point was when he finally met a woman who would eventually become his future wife. And while he was dating this woman, she made it clear, and he loved her. Love really does make a difference in one's life, but she gave him an ultimatum and threatened to leave him if he did not get sober. So he committed to sobriety. And after 4 years of being sober, he earned the biggest job of his career. And during that 4 years, he's going through therapy. He shifted his mindset completely, and he started a new set of habits and routines, and including practicing martial arts. And if you've ever done martial arts, it's good for the mind because you're having to focus, and it centers you and it makes you think. So he really changed the direction of his life and of his career. Who am I talking about? This is Robert Downey Jr. For those of you who may not have known that sordid backstory, that is who he is. Robert Downey Jr. had the biggest career going for him in the 1980s and in the 1990s. He was a great talent, had so many amazing projects. In 1993, he was nominated for an Oscar for what he did in Chaplin. He wasn't even 30 yet. And then when he turned 30, he had drug problems before this, but it became a major problem after he got that Oscar nomination. So from 1996 to 1999, that's when he went through his drug arrests and prison. And then in 2000 and 2001, he tried to do another comeback, but that's when he failed again and ended up having to go to rehab. But he was starring on a major show. You might have heard of it, some of us older people, Ally McBeal. And he won a Golden Globe for it. He's a talented individual. And yet he lost because he got arrested again in 2001. They fired him. So in 2003, after going through rehab yet again, he met his wife, Susan Levin. And that's when she put the ultimatum to him. And they're still married today. This is fantastic, a fantastic story here. So in 2004 to 2005, he made a commitment to sobriety. And guess what happens? 2008, he lands the biggest job of his career that basically establishes him for the rest of his life. He gets the role of Tony Stark in Iron Man. What a turnaround. What a huge turnaround. He ignored the warning signs. I'm not saying you will always get to ignore the warning signs and get the biggest job of your career. He got lucky because he got the right people in his life who got in his way and helped him make the mind shift changes to his life. And now he has the biggest acting career in Hollywood. He is in demand. People are looking for him to do parts, and it could flub. They don't care. His name carries weight now. You think about it, in 2008, he was a risk. Just imagine the insurance bill to cover him on Iron Man for that. Somebody took a risk on him because they knew he had talent, but they also knew at the time that he had made a commitment to change. And he finally paid attention to the warning signs and got his life in gear. He had a breakdown 5 times or more. He had many breakdowns with a massive breakdown here and there. That breakdown created a breakthrough. Breakthroughs are about shifting your mindset. Stephen Covey's paradigm shift is a breakthrough is when we really see the world differently and choose to leave the old world, the old view behind. So Albert Einstein has a quote about this. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. And that Albert Einstein also has another great quote where he says, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Great scientific mind there, but it's exactly right for everything. You can't expect to get different results if you do the same thing over and over again. You must choose to be humbled by choosing your own breakthrough, or you're going to get humbled and the world is going to force it on you. That's what happened to Robert Downey Jr. He did not choose his own breakthrough. He didn't choose what he needed to do before the breakdowns that happened. He didn't choose correctly, and the world chose it for him, and he paid dearly for a long time. He got lucky. Many studios will on many of the actors that are out there who fall into these traps never recover. Never recover. He got lucky. He knew the right people to get in there and help him get his life back on track. Not every one of us has that. If you hit a breakdown, your breakthrough may happen, but you may not be able to achieve the success you wanted. It will change the direction of your life in a way that you did not want. By choosing your own breakthrough, your own breakdown, you are in control of your life by doing that. How do you do this? Well, part of this is before a crisis comes, you need to prepare yourself. Reading great books, surrounding yourself with the right people, placing yourself in growth-focused environments, doing things like what I did every damn day. Go to the gym every single day. Get your mind right. These were the preparations I did for 2 years to prepare for my father when he was ill and dying, and for the 6 months I had to take care of him. That was the crisis I had to prepare for. And it helped, and it worked. Warren Buffett says the best investment you can make is in yourself. So, invest time and money now to avoid the major breakdowns. Have the minor ones. Choose the minor breakdowns. Don't wait for the major ones. So, invest in counseling, coaching, or other tools that will improve your self-awareness of the deficiencies you have, as well as those relationships you need to improve on. So improve on yourself, improve on your relationships. Having strong, good, solid relationships with people who will support you and lift you up are so critical, so that when those breakdowns do occur, they're there to lift you up. Sometimes they're the ones that can give you the warning signs and help you to avoid the major breakdown. So what's the cost? Well, I said it. The relationships with your spouse and your kids and your friends, divorce, financial struggles, career impact, mental health issues, all of these things are the costs. Are they worth it? I can tell you from experience, no. I've experienced some of those. I've had relationship issues with my wife, my kids, my best friend, all of my friends. I've had relationship issues with all of them during that time. It took years to rebuild that after the breakdown I experienced. Financial struggles, it's going to take years to repair that damage. Career impact, I was pretty fortunate to get my IT career back, and I'm actually stronger than I've ever been there. So that was a great thing for me. And my mental health, stronger than it's ever been. Thankfully, I never went through a divorce. I've repaired many of those relationships I have with people. There's still things that need to be worked on there because of who I was for so long. But I've learned. I've learned from the mistakes, and I've learned from the breakdowns. And now I choose my warning signs. I listen to them, and I act sooner and take action before the major breakdown. Dad, husbands, I challenge you to do the same thing. You are the leader of your family. You are in charge of a lot of things. You have a responsibility to provide and to protect. And therefore, you need to take care of yourself. And you need to pay attention to when the warning shots are put across your bow to change course before you hit that iceberg and you sink your ship. You really need to pay attention to those warning signs. I challenge you, look for them. Identify the things you struggle with today. Write them down in your journal. Talk about those with your spouse, your kids, your friends. Look for feedback on ways to actually improve on those things so that you can avoid the major breakdown. Folks, I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching and listening this week. We'll talk to you next week. Take care.